Thank you to the UK and also to the Republic of Korea for getting us that much closer to our goal. Now for the next session. The Clean Energy Ministerial has brought together international organizations, countries, companies for the last decade to achieve a single mission: to accelerate clean energy transitions across every technology platform and solution set. So please help me welcome today's moderator, John Elkind, who hails from Columbia University and was formerly the chair of the CEM Steering Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie, and welcome to this session, which is highlighting the work of the Clean Energy Ministerial. 12 years ago, I worked with colleagues in the Obama administration to set up the Clean Energy Ministerial, as some of you may have heard 2 nights ago from David Sandalo, my former colleague then. We envisioned it as a bottom-up platform for countries to share knowledge and work together on clean energy areas of mutual interest. The original 12 CEM member countries focused on topics like the supply, efficiency, and access issues, smart grids, electric vehicles, solar and wind, hydropower, appliance efficiency, and more. Now, in its 13th year, the Clean Energy Ministerial brings together a much larger coalition of the world's leading and largest companies, countries, and international organizations to achieve a single mission: the acceleration of clean energy transitions across every possible technology platform and solution set. CEM's membership has grown. So too has its work. The CEM community now includes multiple areas of work across power, transport, industry, and clean fuels. It addresses finance, green skills, future leaders, long-term planning, all issues that are necessary not just to achieve the just transition to clean energy, but to do so in a way that is equitable and sustainable. As David Sandalo mentioned the other night, we have so much more work to do, and that is what makes me so very pleased to be participating with you tonight. Today, in this session, you'll hear from members of the CEM community about the Clean Energy Ministerial's impact and actions to create the global demand pull and market push that are necessary to drive down clean energy costs, to massively expand decarbonization efforts across all sectors, and to embrace an inclusive and whole-of-society approach to these challenges. You'll also hear about new areas of collaboration within the CEM, whether it be new work to increase the supply of solar energy or decarbonize maritime transportation, all with an open offer to those who are here gathered today to join us, to help contribute and share your knowledge. So as a first element of this plenary session, I would now like to pass the floor to Dan Dorner, who, as you know, heads the Secretariat of the Clean Energy Ministerial. Dan?
Thank you so much, John, and it's great to see everyone here. The Clean Energy Ministerial, for those of you that may not know it or may not know it well, is all about one single thing: clean energy action, and accelerating that action as fast as we possibly can. So there's no greater fora to host our 13th Clean Energy Ministerial meeting than here in Pittsburgh, in the United States, the home and the founder of the Clean Energy Ministerial, to have the Global Clean Energy Action Forum. And I hope you're all having a really tremendous time here, because I certainly am. And the way that we do this in the Clean Energy Ministerial is by building coalitions. Coalitions who are all committed to action and all to achieving that one mission of accelerating transitions. Coalitions of countries and governments, but also of companies, international experts all around the world, from researchers to regulators, from high-level think tanks to those who are delivering on the ground. And as I've heard and been inspired by Secretary Granholm herself, the mantra of deploy, deploy, deploy is exactly what we're about. We're focused on the deployment of clean energy solutions on the ground, seeing it happen in reality. And the community, the coalitions that we bring together to do that are absolutely critical and are very, very powerful. Collectively, our membership alone accounts for 90% of all global clean energy investment in the world today. So what they do, not just for themselves as members, but as a group, matters not just for them as members, but it really matters in terms of global trends, global directions, and where the world is going to go. And we also work across all sectors. We don't just work in the power sector, the energy sector as it's sometimes talked about, because energy is ubiquitous across our entire economy. We also have active work streams across industry, transport, buildings, also across cross-cutting themes like investment and finance, equality and empowering people and giving them the skills for the workforce of the future. Because collaboration is critical, because doing that will be not just to the benefit of each, but to the benefit of all. Getting it right means that we can achieve our clean energy and our climate goals by mid-century. Getting it wrong means that we don't just miss those goals by a little bit, we miss them by miles. And mid-century becomes end-century, and the damaging climate consequences of that for our communities, for our families, will become all too apparent. But we're lucky we have a really committed and amazing global community. It's really been amazing to bring them here to Pittsburgh to meet the amazing clean energy community here in Pittsburgh over the last few days. And I think I want to make sure that this is both an action and an inspiration forum to make sure that what we see here and we achieve here is carried forward with great momentum in the days, weeks, months, and years ahead. I'll stop there, but I just want you to know there is a collective invitation to join that community. It's a very inclusive community, and we want to work with you. And now I'd like to hand over to a great friend of the Clean Energy Ministerial, somebody who knows the Clean Energy Ministerial better than most, but also a great energy leader, not just here in the United States, but a great energy leader globally, and a great friend of mine, Deputy Secretary of Energy, Mr. David Turk. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dan, for that introduction. And I have to give a special shout out to my former boss, my friend, my colleague, my mentor, John Elkine. I suspect some of our folks have had a chance to get to know you, John, but maybe you've not had a chance to work with you day in and day out as we did together for several years. John is the kind of boss that you hope for, the kind of friend that you hope for. John is the kind of guy that, I hope people say this about me from time to time, is what you see in public is what you get in private. And he's just a good, decent guy. And I feel like Dan is another one of those good, decent guys trying to do good things in this world. And I think that's what the CEM is really about. There's obviously countries involved. There's the private sector involved, but it comes down to people in the end. All right, what I thought I'd do here, and hopefully this sets the scene for the panel that John's going to moderate, along with John's comments and Dan's comments as well, a little bit of the history and maybe a little bit of the color and texture, a little personal perspective from myself. John was right there along with David Sandalow in the origin days of the CEM. I got there, I think, in CEM 5 or so, so a few years later than that, but a little color and texture on the history, which I think is important. It's good to know where your roots are. It's good to know where the origin story is, just like in Marvel movies. It's good to know the origin stories for something like the CEM. And then a few thoughts, personal thoughts on the way forward. A few recommendations to those who the baton has been passed to and who are now leading the CEM and really moving the CEM, just as the United States is trying to do with this year's conference in particular. I have to say, too, it's great to have people here in person. I think this is the first CEM in person in 3 years, Dan, is that right? And just to see the energy, the enthusiasm, the old friendships that are reconnecting, the new friendships, the deals being made. And credit to my colleagues here in the US government for hosting this Global Clean Energy Action Forum, which in the CEM is nested within, the MI is nested within, just an energy, a real vision. John, some of the things that we've been talking about for years and years, I think really coming to fruition. And I know our Indian colleagues who are hosting next year's CEM meeting will do a phenomenal job with their hosting. All right, so just to comment on the origin story, John got into this a little bit as well. This was, I'd go back to 2009, even a little bit before the CEM first had its meeting in 2010. I had a chance to go to the climate conference in Copenhagen that year. That was supposed to be the big meeting that saved the planet. I'm not a big supporter that we're going to have a meeting that saves the planet. The planet is going to be saved because a lot of countries, a lot of private sector leaders, a lot of NGOs, others are doing work day in and day out. But anyway, this was supposed to be the big meeting that saved the planet. And I actually think a lot of progress was done in Copenhagen that built the stage, built the foundation for where we ended up in Paris. But there was a lot of disappointment coming out of that meeting as well. The hype was crazy and we were never going to be able to do that. And again, one meeting is not going to be able to do that. And coming out of that meeting, I think David and John and others who were involved had such a phenomenal idea. And I think it's an even better idea now than maybe it was in the origin days. It was a phenomenal origin idea as well, is get the doers together. It's great to get the diplomats together. I worked at the State Department a couple times, phenomenal colleagues, but if you really want to have a clean energy transition, a transformation with all the benefits that that has in the real world, you've got to get the doers together. And on the government side, the doers, I think, are energy ministries. I'm a little partial now working for the Department of Energy. But what I've seen with other energy ministers, other energy ministry colleagues, these are the colleagues, these are the ministers who are responsible for implementing whatever goals are set in that country by the Prime Minister, by the President, by others, to deliver, and to deliver in the real world. And so bringing together the doers, the biggest countries of the world from the G20, but also very, very importantly, it wasn't just G20 countries, it was other countries who are leaders, who are visionaries in the clean energy space. I think Denmark's a perfect example of that. There are a number of great examples of that within the CEN. Bring them together in an efficient package of countries. Instead of 130 countries, it was never envisioned to be 150 countries. Everybody is part of the CEN. It was really the doers who could move global markets in very, very significant ways. So the CEM was launched in 2010. Fast forward to today. Where are we today? One of the remarkable things we've been able to do in our world is have a proliferation of these net zero commitments. Secretary Kerry had one nugget, and I've not heard it expressed this way. He said 90% of global GDP is in a country with a net zero commitment of some kind. That's a remarkable piece of achievement. The goal now, of course, is implementation and action. This is the Global Clean Energy Action Forum, action being the letter I would underline about 4 or 5, 10 times. It's about action. That's where we're at as a world. That's where we're at. And I think when you look at action, you have to think of two pieces of that, all relevant, incredibly relevant in the CEM context. One is each country in the CEM, and hopefully every country around the world, does what they need to do action-wise in their own country. Incredibly lucky. I won't talk about the Inflation Reduction Act or the bipartisan infrastructure legislation. Hopefully you've heard that. Incredibly exciting legislation. We've never had action, and we will have action like you've never seen before, not only in the US, but I think anywhere in the world, given all that's in that package. For DOE, that's $100 billion that we have action opportunities, partnership, and all sorts of ranges of technologies going forward. But then the CEM brings all these countries together for inspiration, for learning from each other. Doers within these governments helping each other do and be successful. It's not a zero-sum game, it's the exact opposite of that. That vibe is so much different than you get in other forums, I've found. It's collaboration, it's cajoling sometimes, It's trying to have a race to the top phenomena that you don't see in a lot of international organizations. All right, so we've got this historic opportunity. We've got these net zero goals. We've got the doers. We've got the right doers. We've got the public. We've got the private sector all coming together. 4 quick, again, personal lessons, observations from my time working on the CEM day in and day out. Now it's maybe week in and week out and helping to support Dan, helping to support our DOE colleagues. The first is be very disciplined from a comparative advantage perspective. Is the CEM the right forum to do the right kind of cooperation on the right technology area? For a lot of areas, it might be. For other areas, it may be that someone else is better positioned, whether it's mission innovation or others, to take that piece on. Second part is look to try to build critical mass. We have a lot of discussions, we have a lot of meetings, we have a lot of things going on in the international world. I'm a firm believer we need to have critical mass. We need to have center of gravities where we can make progress, not just small ball kind of stuff, but big stuff, really important kinds of stuff. The CEM is doing that in many areas. I think there's opportunities to have that critical mass even further in the CEM working with other organizations. Third recommendation is both lead, but very importantly, follow. I think a lot of us want to have careers where we have real-world impact and we are leading. I think it's equally important, and I put the U.S. in this case in particular to follow. There's a lot of great leadership by other countries. There's a lot of great leadership by other private sectors. We need leaders, but we also need followers. We need to support others if they get the limelight and good things happen in the real world to our neighbors, our friends, our family all around the world. That's great, and we should be comfortable in our own careers, comfortable in our own governments to follow. And I think we have both leaders and followers, but I'd underline the follower part of it in particular. And then lastly, this is a historic opportunity. I'd say it is a historic responsibility. There's a lot of weight in the shoulders. The CEM countries are those countries of the world in which we're either going to have the clean energy transition we need to have, or we don't. There's not another group of countries with that kind of power, not just hard power, soft power, the investments, the innovation that can be brought to it. There's no group of countries other than the CEM countries who are going to get this done. That's a lot of historic responsibility. And my last urging, my last recommendation is be bold. This is not a time for just nibbling around the margins. Let's be bold. Let's really lean in. Ask ourselves the question, is this good enough? Is this big enough? Is this impressive enough? Is this going to move the needle? Is this something that is true to these countries coming to the table at this particular moment in time, this historic opportunity, historic responsibility? All right, with that, I think we're going to get on with the program. And again, thanks, John, to everything you've done. Thanks, Dan, for you. And special thanks to all colleagues who have put sweat, equity into the CEM, intellectual equity, passion equity, blood, I hope not. I hope there's not been as much blood put into this, sweat, blood, and tears, some tears along the way as well. But a particular thanks to everyone who's taken the CEM to where it is now, and really looking forward to seeing what India does at next year's ministerial meeting and all the initiatives, all the campaigns that the CEM has. All right, thanks everybody.
Dave, thank you very much. I believe, if I understand correctly, that we are now going to invite onto the stage our panelists to speak next. And if that's not the case, then I hope somebody will stop me quickly. We have 3 excellent panelists to join us today. First, Dr. Megan Woods from New Zealand. Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Dr. Ajay Mathur from the International Solar Alliance. And Minister Jetten from the Netherlands. Please have seats, all. Thank you all very much for participating. For a word of slightly more formality in introducing the colleagues who have kindly joined us. Minister Woods, Dr. Woods is Minister of Energy, and as I noted in your bio, several other ministries as well. I was tempted to think that if only you got the transportation portfolio as well, you'd basically cover the entire clean energy economy. So that's quite impressive. Dr. Ajay Mathur, known to many who are with us today, is Director General of the International Solar Alliance and has served in so many different important leadership positions at TERI, in the Indian government, at the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, as a negotiator on behalf of India in the World Bank, and in the World Bank as well. Minister Yetin, I know that you have recently taken this important portfolio in a time of real challenge, so we are really pleased to have all three of you here today. Dr. Woods, if I could turn to you first. New Zealand joined the Clean Energy Ministerial in 2020, and as I understand, you are focusing a great deal on building the hydrogen economy and the uptake of electric vehicles in New Zealand. So I wonder if you could give us a little bit of a sense of how you are thinking about New Zealand's priorities in relation to the CEM agenda.
Thank you very much, and certainly the work that we're doing around hydrogen and also the electric vehicle uptake is absolutely critical to the decarbonisation plans that New Zealand is now required to have in terms of our emission reduction plans as a result of our carbon budgeting and climate legislation, which is very similar to the UK model. So we're building these sector by sector from the ground up. Absolutely critical to our first two carbon budgets are industrial and process heat decarbonisation and decarbonisation in transport. We are partnering with industry in New Zealand, public-private partnerships to help fund decarbonisation pathways. Most of the time in New Zealand that will be through electrification. We're 85 to 90% renewable electricity, but only 40% renewable energy. So we've still got a lot of work to do. In terms of the CEM initiative around hydrogen, this is absolutely critical. Our international collaborations are critical to us developing our strategy. We have international agreements in place with Japan, with Singapore, a research agreement with Germany, a public-private agreement with Korea. So these are all important conversations for us to be thinking about how it is that we can produce hydrogen not only for our domestic economy and what that might mean for heavy freight and transportation and potentially storage, but also what it might mean in terms of an export industry for New Zealand as well. And critical to be having those conversations around things like certification, how it is that we transport, and making sure that as a globe we're moving forward together and developing common standards around that. But domestically, hydrogen plays an important part of our decarbonisation story, not only as a form of storage or as a fuel for transportation, but an important part of how it is that we can build to the 100% renewable electricity target that we have by 2030. The ability to monetize over capacity. We're working on storage, long-term storage in the form of pumped hydro, but actually having capacity contracting and demand management contracting, absolutely critical, and hydrogen is an important part of that. And we're also wanting to make sure that we're developing our own research base in New Zealand. So there's a company in my electorate, for example, Fabrum, which are developing a membrane-free hydrogas production system. And one of the absolute critical parts of this is that it doesn't use rare earth catalytic metals in the process. So there's innovation in New Zealand that we think we can feed into what other countries are doing as well.
Excellent. And I note the way in which your remarks link the international collaboration to delivery of New Zealand's priorities and New Zealand's objectives, which is, I think, a pretty powerful point to highlight. Dr. Mathur, Ajay, thank you again for your continuing engagement with this community. You were absolutely central in building it and seeing its flourishing. I would like to ask you now, in your new role as Director General at International Solar Alliance, to speak a little bit about the new solar initiative that the Clean Energy Ministerial is kicking off, whose goal, as I understand it, is to help create multiple solar supply chains and massively expand solar photovoltaic deployment. So tell us a bit about how you are thinking about objectives in this arena, and what does it mean for ISA and for the broader community wishing to deploy solar energy in their economies.
John, it's a pleasure to be here. It's always been a pleasure to come to the Clean Energy Ministerials, and and its evolution into the Global Clean Energy Action Forum is, I think, one of the best things that has occurred, particularly from a solar energy point of view. At the International Solar Alliance, we have been extremely concerned that the supply chain logistics is breaking down. And what that shows us is in terms of the prices of solar panels. We have seen a spiking of prices in the past 7 months or so. And therefore, it is important that we'll start looking at geographically diversified manufacturing. This makes sense from the point of view that we are looking at solar demand occur across the world, from the point of view of ensuring prices that to consumers which are affordable, and ensuring that the supply chains provide opportunities for as many local jobs as possible. At the Solar Alliance, this makes great sense for us, because if we want, our goal is that solar becomes the energy source of choice. And for it to become the energy source of choice, we need multiple goals, amongst them price, but also amongst them benefits to the country in terms of jobs, and benefits to the world in terms of low and ultimately zero carbon emissions. All of this comes together here.
Thank you, and I think that that's such a powerful point about the importance of seeing within jurisdictions the employment benefits and others, even though we live in a world that still has many globalized attributes, that need for governments also to deliver not just the power, but where possible, where the investment comes along as well, those local jobs in the manufacture. I think that's a terribly important point. Minister Yetten, thank you for being here today. It is obviously not an uncomplicated time in Europe on the energy front, so we doubly appreciate your taking the time to be here. Netherlands joined the Clean Energy Ministerial in 2019, and your country co-leads the work on biofuels and hydrogen, two solutions, one of which we've heard about a bit already, that aren't just another technological solution, but are potentially real game changers. So could you tell us how you and your colleagues in the Netherlands are thinking about the collaborations that you can pursue here in the Clean Energy Ministerial in these topics?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
We need a mic for Mr. Metten. Yes.
Okay, it's working now. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here these days and on this stage. As you said, it's a hard time for Europeans. When I started in January as a Minister for Climate and Energy, I expected to spend most of my time on climate policies, but I've been an energy minister for the past 9 months. But I truly believe that this Russian aggression and the war in Ukraine it is first of all a disaster for the Ukrainian people, but it is also a huge wake-up call for all Europeans that we've been over-dependent on cheap fossil fuels from Russia, and it's a real game changer for the energy transition. And as a climate minister with huge ambitions, 60% emission reductions in 2030, climate neutral in 2050, I'm not going to make it without a successful energy transition. So I'm really glad to be here, because Obviously, we're focusing on getting through this harsh winter, making sure the gas storages are filled, but we also have to think about next winter and all the other winters to come. And Europe needs to become energy independent as quickly as possible, and we can't do it without international collaboration. And the CEM and the MI and the, well, this combined forum is crucial to connect, in our case, importing countries and possible exporting countries like New Zealand. So I've been really inspired these few days with several of the roundtables and ministerial meetings that I attended. Briefly, the Netherlands is investing heavily in wind at the North Sea, 70 gigawatts by 2050. We will have our own electrolyzing capacity. We're already building hydrogen infrastructure, connecting all the ports and industrial clusters. We will become the energy hub, the gateway for the hinterland in Germany and several other countries. But we do know one thing for sure. Northwest Europe, with all the ambitions, will not be able to produce enough green molecules for our own transport and industry sectors. So we need other countries. And for me, it's crucial that we set up a worldwide a trade forum for hydrogen as soon as possible, making sure that the certification and regulation is in place and making sure that businesses to businesses sign contracts. Because we can do a lot as governments, but it's eventually up to businesses to sign the contracts. So we had interesting talks about that. And then on biofuel and bioresources, all the technology is in place. And all the countries that have plenty of forests and whatever are willing to step in. But if we want to make sure that the public supports bioresources in the years to come, it needs to be sustainable. And we need CEM and other international forums to get all the regulation in place to make sure that all the things that we are doing worldwide is sustainable in the long term.
Thank you very much. That's really important for us to hear. I mean, we have just a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to pose a question that I'd like to hear any reactions on. I am struck that one of the common challenges that we face in many jurisdictions across this clean energy ministerial community isn't simply the creation of the energy provider, the fuel, what have you. Often it comes back to the social impacts around siting and permitting. It's a huge challenge in the United States. I know it has also been a challenge in Europe. In India, I'm less well familiar with the extent to which this has been a challenge in the very green islands of New Zealand. Your comments, how are we as a community dealing with the challenge of permitting? And we'll have to be a little bit quick on this round, but please.
One of the things, we're setting this as a major work stream in New Zealand. So, for example, we're investigating a 5 terawatt pumped hydro scheme in the South Island of New Zealand. As part of that technical working group, we have our environmental NGOs sitting on that group from the outset. I think a more sophisticated conversation is starting to occur. Decarbonisation and the importance that needs to be placed on that in terms of how it is that we're going to ensure the survival of our planet and what environmentalism in the 21st century needs to prioritise. In terms of local communities, in New Zealand, of course, bringing our Indigenous populations into the conversation is early, and being at the table from the start is always important. But, you know, every country has its challenges in this. We need momentum, we need speed, but we need to make sure we're bringing the public with us as well.
Well said. Ajay?
John, as far as the International Solar Alliance is concerned, in a sense, this is work in progress. And why is it a work in progress? Because solar and batteries will produce enough waste in the next 25 years at the end of their lives to ruin our lives. They have to be recycled. If they have to be recycled, then they have to strip them down to their original materials, which means you need standards today to manufacture for tomorrow. This implies that the permitting requirements should be such that they ask for panels to be put which meet these standards. Those standards are under preparation. Every new technology would have similar kinds of challenges. I don't say it's a recycling challenge, but similar kind of challenge. So technical standards to us are the starting point for the permitting process.
Excellent. Thank you. Minister Yetten.
We have a very interesting new company in the Netherlands. It's called Solarge, and they produce solar PV from recycled plastics. Lightweight, very cheap, very affordable for everyone. It's perfect. So why shouldn't this be the new norm? If we can produce solar PV from recycled plastics, let's stop buying the waste that is being produced right now. So governments have to take the lead on this. Secondly, we're talking about importing, exporting countries on hydrogen. We should keep in mind the Sustainable Development Goals. Namibia, for example, is one of the potential big hydrogen exporting countries. Would be great to partner with them and import green hydrogen from Namibia, but as long as the Namibian people don't have clean and affordable energy for themselves, we're not doing the right things. So I think there is a big responsibility for the importing countries to get to agreements with the possible exporting countries, how to support local people, how to support indigenous people, and how to keep in mind the environment as well.
Well, with that, unfortunately, we'll have to wrap up our panel. I ask you to join me in thanking our excellent panelists, Minister Megan Woods from New Zealand, Dr. Ajay Mathur from International Solar Alliance, Minister Rob Yetten from the Netherlands. Please. Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you so much.
As always, wonderful.
Cheers. Cheers. Thanks. And I think this side. Yeah, please. Okay. Next, I want to shift gears a little bit and have a piece of our conversation that looks at the progress that we are achieving in relation to clean energy objectives. And for this element of the program, I'd like to invite to the podium Ethan Zindler, who is the head of Americas at Bloomberg NEF. This week, Bloomberg NEF has released the Energy Transition Fact Book, which provides the CEM community with key measurable trends in the development and deployment of clean energy technologies, and also the key obstacles that remain ahead. Ethan, over to you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, John, and hi, everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to participate in today's session. Bloomberg NEF is a research division of Bloomberg focused on energy transition, and we've had the privilege to be involved in various ways with the CEM for over a dozen years in terms of producing research. And this year, I'm very proud to show off the fact book that we produced, primarily to inform policymakers here about some of the key facts and trends that we've seen within the energy transition, really over the last decade or so. Electronic versions are available, if you would like, on the Clean Energy Ministerial website and also on the bnef.com website. So I'm going to talk for about 5 minutes about where things are going, and really some of the stuff I'm going to talk about builds off the trends that we heard in that last panel. And really it falls into kind of two categories, good and less good news about the transition as we've seen it over the last 10 years. So let's start with the good news, of course, which is that last year was a record year for the amount of new renewable capacity built around the world. We saw about 180 gigawatts of new solar capacity built, about 90 gigawatts of new wind built. It was a record for solar, a record for renewables overall. You can see that little bottom chunk there, which is black, which is that only 13 new gigawatts of coal capacity was brought online last year. So you could say this is a sign that renewables are winning. Similarly, if you look at it on a sort of proportional basis, about 10 years ago, the majority of new capacity that got built in any given year was fossil fuel capacity. That is no longer the case. That blue line that you see represents wind and solar. Again, about 3/4 of everything that's getting built now is renewable around the world. And the light green line that you see above that is for all zero carbon technologies. So that's taking into account nuclear and hydro as well. If you want to look at it by countries, about 53 countries around the world, solar was the #1 technology that was installed on a megawatt basis last year. That's the yellow countries. On a blue basis, those are the wind countries where the most capacity installed was wind. Overall, about 3/4 of the countries around the world, the #1 technology installed last year was a zero carbon technology. So again, we're moving in the right direction in terms of the volume of stuff. And the main reason for that is because of economics. And obviously, those of you who've been around this industry for a while know that subsidies and policies and mandates to try and build out clean energy is really what got things going earlier on. But most recently, we're starting to see real cost competitiveness for renewables globally. And a fairly interesting trend is that if you roll the clock back to about 2019, we were just starting to get to the point where wind and solar were becoming cost competitive and able to undercut natural gas in a lot of parts of the world. And that's this levelized cost of energy chart that I'm showing you here. Then over the next year and a half or so, the cost of renewables continued to decline and the gap widened a bit and renewables became more cost competitive. And then, as was mentioned on the last panel, over the last year and a half or so specifically, we've not seen the same kind of cost declines, and in some cases, some cost increases around the world. But the good news for the industry is that because fossil fuel prices have risen so substantially, that basically the gap is widened further, and so you have more, even further cost competitiveness for renewables. And if we could put my slides up, I think folks here in the room would be able to understand what I'm talking about better. Thanks. So that's the good news on the power side. Just talk for a second about electric vehicles. And I think when you talk about EVs, you kind of need the very, very latest data. And we heard a moment ago from the minister, about an hour ago from Norway, about how the majority of new cars sold in their country are EVs. Around the world, on a global basis, about 14% of all car sales last quarter were electric or had a plug, which is pretty remarkable. 1 in 7 cars now sold worldwide has a plug, and that number has been rising. And if you think about the impact on oil demand, by our calculation, you're subtracting already about 1.5 million barrels of oil per day of demand. And interestingly enough, it's not cars yet that are really making the biggest impact. It's 2- and 3-wheelers and the proliferation of those in Southeast Asia in particular that are making the biggest difference. To be clear, you know, we're still only talking about a reduction maybe from the status quo of oil of about 3%, but nonetheless, this is a real and measurable impact. So, we also heard from the panel about supply chains and value chains of the different technologies. And again, if you put the slides up, that'd be helpful. And then one of the main things that we try to portray, or among the things we try to portray here in the fact book, is that while I showed a world in which demand for clean energy technologies is very geographically dispersed, the production of that equipment is not so dispersed at the moment. So first, let's just start with the metals that go into batteries and where those get refined. And you can see this top chunk that you can see there. The majority of the activity for 2 of the 3 main metals takes place in China. For nickel, it's a bit more of a diversified picture. If you look further down down the value chain at the actual components that go into batteries, again, for the most part, we're talking about a supply chain that mostly is focused in China today, with the US having a role in one segment of the value chain. And finally, I thought I would show solar because that is what Ajay was talking about from the International Solar Alliance. And again, this is highly concentrated in China at the moment, particularly on the upstream side. The further you go down, it gets a bit more diversified if you look at the assembly of modules and cells. All right, so my last chart is one that will not fill you with joy and probably violates all the rules of giving a good public presentation where you're supposed to end on an up. But I wanted to give some sense as to the scale of the challenge going forward. Because while we saw all that deployment of renewables last year, and while we're seeing this very rapid rollout of electric vehicles, the reality of it is last year, power sector CO2 emissions jumped by 7% year on year. So the decline that we had seen, thanks to COVID, disappeared very quickly. And it wasn't just that the top line amount of electricity rose, it did a bit, it's that the amount of coal that we burned last year set a new all-time record. The amount of natural gas that got burned around the world also set an all-time record. And even the amount of diesel fuel that we burned rose, although it's still well below its all-time high. So while there's been this incredible progress made, this gives you a sense as the scale of the challenge going forward, because there's so much incumbent generation out there and incumbent sources of fossil fuel generation, CO2 emissions that have yet to fully be addressed. But nonetheless, I hope I do have left you with some sense of hope about the cost competitiveness for renewables and about the progress that's been achieved. The real question now is, can we just do this faster? Thank you very much.
Ethan, thank you very much for that very informative and useful presentation. We now will switch to the announcements segment of our program. And we have a number of announcements, a selection from across the Clean Energy Ministerial community that we will bring to you here in a kind of a rapid-fire fashion. I stress that this is just a sampling of some of the work that is being undertaken in the Clean Energy Ministerial that shows how countries are sharing knowledge, creating common targets, and acting jointly to accelerate a clean and equitable tomorrow. Our first announcement will be presented to us by Associate Deputy Minister Molly Johnson from Natural Resources Canada, who will be speaking on behalf of the CEM's Equality in Energy Transitions Initiative, where Canada leads, co-leads, excuse me. Over to you, please.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here to announce the winners for the 2021-2022 Equality in Energy Transitions Awards. Canada leads this program under the Equality in Energy Transitions Initiative and in collaboration with our partner, Women in Renewable Energy Canada. And I want to thank Wire Canada for their fantastic work in putting this year's program together. It really was a wonderful event. We received an outstanding number of impressive applications this year from across the world, and so I want to thank the judges, but also all of the people who put themselves forward and their dedication to this work. I also want to emphasize the importance of recognizing outstanding individuals and organizations from all over the globe who are contributing to the clean energy future while advancing the empowerment of women. It really is important that we do take a moment to recognize leadership and achievements that promote career advancement and inspire women of all ages and walks of life to contribute to the clean energy field and help close gender gaps. And those gaps are very real. These awards were presented this morning to recipients at the Women Empower the Energy Transition Side event, but I think it's a great moment for us to take a moment to honor them here. So, in the Organizational Leadership Award category, this year's award winner was presented to the Chilean Ministry of Energy. Its work as a member of the Equality Initiative and as a new signatory to the Equal by 30 campaign, which was announced today, as well its National Women in Energy program. It really did set a standard as an organization, and we look forward to their collaboration in this area. I do want to thank Minister Pardow for accepting the award on behalf of his ministry and for sharing very inspirational words about their path forward and the change making that they are going to be doing. In the Women in Distinction category, I'm delighted to announce that Sam Kraft was the recipient of this year's award. Sam is the Director of Operations, Manager for NRG Solar, based in Richmond, Australia. She's also the co-founder of Australian Women in Solar Energy, a network devoted to advancing women in all aspects of Australia's solar energy industry. So big congratulations to Sam. And finally, I want to congratulate the winner of the Emerging Leader Award, Pooja Shah. Pooja is an engineer by trade, and a senior consultant at DNV Energy in Kansas City, Kansas. She's also a mentor for energy storage through the Global Women's Network for Energy Transition. And maybe just to take a moment to say, she shares some very inspirational words about her journey and the work that she's done, and look forward to watching her career with great interest. She's an incredible example of what engagement together, network, and mentorship can do. So it's truly my honor to recognize these incredible women, the organizations doing great work in gender equality in the sector. So I'm encouraged by all of the achievements, the folks, and I think that is our quick hit on the women in empowering youth. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for those remarks, Associate Deputy Minister Johnson. I would now like to invite to the podium Mr. Abe Bakri, the Director General of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency within the Indian Ministry of Power. I will be presenting to us on behalf of the community that is developing the new solar manufacturing initiative. Please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a privilege to announce here a new work stream on the solar manufacturing on behalf of Government of India. So India is a founder member of Clean Energy Ministerial since 2009, and we hosted also the CEM 4 in 2013. We are very privileged to also host the CEM 14 next year. India has been immensely benefited through international cooperation in specific work streams on the appliance side, the demand side, the power system flexibility, EVI, and also the industry deep decarbonization. We see immense value in terms of this cooperation because these work streams actually set context for the different policies and programs which can be further leveraged through the expertise and sharing knowledge, and finally taking it to a major effective policies in the country itself. There are many policies and outcomes which India is proud of through the CEM initiatives. In this regard, if we see the clean energy transition, which is announced by most of the countries, and including India, we see the value for solar as one of the major sources for renewable. When different countries have embarked upon their net zero targets, and of course the near-term targets by 2030, including India's 500 gigawatt in non-fossil fuel, the solar energy is going to be the biggest share up to 270 gigawatt. And therefore, we believe that all the countries have a value in deciding on coming together on the solar manufacturing. So this new work stream called CEM work stream on solar manufacturing is being announced today, and we are thankful for USDA for giving this the opportunity in the GCEAF for announcing this work stream. The partner countries are US, Australia, Germany, and many more. And I believe that this work stream will actually deliberate and work forward in getting the expertise, the knowledge from different sectors, industry, to make sure that the manufacturing of solar goes to a new area. They can decide about the technology, they can deliberate on the different opportunities, including the supply chain areas. There is a huge opportunity and the investment potential available, and I'm sure this solar manufacturing in partnership with these countries will actually make a difference in the coming years in terms of deploying a lot of solar installations across the world, and especially it can also help in solving the problem for universal access. I'm really glad to announce these new work streams and look forward for a greater collaboration, not only from the countries who are joining today, but also from the countries who will decide to join in future, and wish all the best for all the actors of this solar manufacturing stream. We are glad that International Solar Alliance, which is also an international organization in India, is partnering with ARENA to make sure that this work stream gets to an effective outcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that announcement and information about the solar manufacturing initiative. We look forward to results in the future. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to turn to some of the industrial emissions and the hard-to-abate sectors that we think about increasingly and that as is needed. We are very pleased to have with us to present on the launching of the green public procurement effort Ms. Rana Ghanem from the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, who will speak about this new effort. UNIDO is coordinator of the Industrial Deep Decarbonization Initiative. Please, Ms. Ghanem, over to you.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm delighted actually today to share with you two announcements. One on behalf of the Energy Management Leadership Awards, which is one of the, I think, longest standing awards that has been hosted under the CEM. And it's an award that encourages facilities to actually implement and raise the bar on improving their energy performance. And today earlier on, just before this session, we honored the 3 winners of the award, which come from Indonesia, Argentina, as well as Ireland. This actually speaks as well to the reach of the CEM community also beyond the countries that are already a member of the CEM. And with that, now I would like to turn to another exciting announcement. And it's not fair to announce in 3 minutes what we've been working on for over 300 days. So what I would like to announce is actually one of the newest campaigns that we are launching under the CEM. That's the Green Public Procurement Campaign, where we are looking out to governments to actually commit to consultations and to commit to adopt targets for green public procurement of low-carbon material for cement and steel. Particularly in the construction sector, this is where governments, and particularly those that are engaged already within the initiative, account for about 25 to 40% of the procurement of these materials. So governments can really give a very strong signals to industry to really put the investments that we need in low-carbon technologies and near-carbon technologies to help accelerate these hard-to-abate or harder-to-abate industries. We've set the level of ambition within this Green Public Procurement Pledge. So now it's really time for the governments here gathered in the room to take action and adopt this pledge and agree to commit to that. As first runners here, we have Canada as well as Germany and the UK, who have agreed to start their own national consultation processes and come back to us, hopefully within the coming 3 or 6 months, with a commitment towards these targets that we have announced. You can get more information both about the pledge as well as the winners on the websites of the awards. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Ghanem. Very quick and to the point, and very much appreciated. From the beginning of today's program, there's been a particular emphasis on the importance of workforces and communities. And so it's very appropriate, therefore, to introduce the next announcement. Dr. Geraldine Richmond, who is the Undersecretary of Department of Energy for Science and Innovation, is going to talk with us about the need for greater research on the economic and social impacts of the energy transition and the role of nuclear energy in helping to replace coal infrastructure and revitalize coal communities. Dr. Richmond, please.
It is so great to be here. It is so great to be here. It's an exciting day. It's been an exciting last 2 days. But I just want to tell you an exciting announcement today to add to the other exciting announcements we have. And that is the launch of a new RISE 3 campaign. Now, RISE 3 stands for campaign I can't even get the first word right, campaign to research the impacts on social equity and economic empowerment. Now, this campaign will demonstrate how nuclear innovation can lift up communities every day, all around the world. RISE 3 will provide an expert resource and create a blueprint for countries transitioning to a clean and just energy economy with nuclear innovation as a key pillar. RISE 3 will recommend areas where nuclear technologies can advance environmental justice and equity. And the campaign will support and track community transformations with a focus on how unabated coal site conversion options with nuclear and renewables yield economic and jobs impact. I'm so excited about this. RISE 3 will also feature advances in design that can benefit communities, such as expanded nuclear renewable integration, flexible electricity grids, hydrogen production, thermal and electrical energy, process heat, and desalination, and much, much more. Now, here at GCEAF, many of us have also heard about an exciting RISE 3 model study on nuclear renewables integration and job creation involving Kenya, and the new RISE 3D cases series on transitioning the communities. RISE 3 will build on the technical work of the 3-year NICE Future Flexible Nuclear Campaign for Nuclear Renewables Integration, also known as FNC. FNC illustrated how innovative nuclear can be operated flexibly in tandem with renewables and maximize a wide range of societal, beneficial, electric and non-electric appliances. Now, both campaigns are part of the NICE Future Initiative and are led by the United States, Canada, Japan, together with the United Kingdom. NICE Future was designed to ensure prominent consideration of nuclear innovation in holistic clean energy planning. And the nuclear energy accounts for about 1/3 of the world's zero-emission electricity production. So let's join to make sure that nuclear can help us accelerate our path to net zero. Thank you for letting me announce this today to all of you. It's very exciting.
Thank you very much, Dr. Richmond, for that announcement. And last but not least, I'd like to invite to the podium Mr. Guy Platten, the Secretary General for the International Chamber of Shipping. We use this term hard to abate sectors, which probably is a misnomer, probably only reflects the fact that we've not yet started to focus with sufficient intensity on some of these sectors. Shipping has an important role to play here as part of the solution set. And so we'd like to invite you to talk about the new work stream that is being launched in this arena. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good day to all of you. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I must first of all thank Secretary Granholm and her team for the invitation to highlight the Clean Energy Marine Hubs initiative that is being developed by the international maritime sector to support the transition to zero-emission fuels. In June this year, we brought together 200 industry leaders from across the entire maritime value chain for a closed-door summit to identify what is needed to reduce the political and investment risks that face our industry as we embark on our journey towards decarbonisation. One outcome of this summit reinforced the need to come together like never before. International shipping is key to the global economy, transporting 90% of global trade volumes with an annual value of $14 trillion per year. We talk a lot about zero-emission fuels needed for the ships, and we're on the way to finding solutions for this. But we do not talk enough about how we're going to transport the zero-emission fuels the rest of the world will use. Half of all zero-emission fuels will be transported by ships, so we need to start the planning now. For example, as I speak today, we have only one hydrogen carrier in the whole world. To kickstart this, we have convened a CEO-led task force representing the entire maritime value chain. The International Chamber of Shipping, representing 80% of the world's ship owners, along with the International Association of Ports and Harbours, classification societies, energy companies, shipbuilders, and all the key actors who day-to-day invest in the development of the maritime industry, have come together to propose the Clean Energy Marine Hubs initiative. We would like to commend the Clean Energy Ministerial Secretariat for their engagement in advancing the concept of these hubs. This is the first time that the entire maritime value chain has come together under the CEM umbrella to unlock the systematic challenges that we all face. We would also like to recognise the leadership of the Government of Canada, Norway, Government of Panama and the Government of United Arab Emirates for being early partners as we develop this initiative. Our task force will now work with these governments, and we welcome other governments to join us as we strive to produce a tangible work plan for the next CEM that will ensure that the tremendous opportunities of zero-emission fuels can be fully realised, scaled and safely delivered for all, both developed and emerging economies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Cheers. Well, as I said earlier, these were just a sampling of the announcements and deliverables that have been brought to the Global Clean Energy Action Forum by the CEM community for this event. It's a really dedicated group of country delegations, companies, research institutions, civil society, and other stakeholders who are all passionate about accelerating the clean energy transition. We did not have time to highlight each and every achievement of that community, but I would just bring to your attention that 17 governments have signed on to a new government fleet declaration to procure electric vehicles, passenger vehicles. 16 new members have signed on to procure zero-emission medium and heavy-duty trucks. 7 countries have agreed to develop clean power action plans before CEM 14 in India next year. We've had the first ever Hydrogen Awards prize winner, 2 awardees for excellence in smart grids, a collective goal from those working on carbon capture to finance 10 CCUS pilot projects for cement by the year 2030, and much more. So if you'd like to hear and learn more about the totality of the CEM agenda, I encourage you to download a copy of the Pittsburgh Action Pact, I knew I was going to stumble on that one, which is available from the website of the Clean Energy Ministerial. The need for announcements like those that you will find in the Action Pact is greater than ever, but don't take my word for it. Please see for yourself in this closing video from the CEM partner, critical partner, Bloomberg Philanthropies. We thank you for your time and for your engagement in today's session. Thanks, everybody.
Climate change is a crisis we all face, and we can only overcome it together. The transition to cleaner energy is an opportunity for new skills, new jobs, new economic opportunities, better air quality, better life quality, and equality for all. But we must work together and leave no one behind. Together, we can create clean, cheap, reliable energy for all. The Clean Energy Ministerial is an inclusive global community working towards one common goal: to protect our one shared planet. Advancing our future starts today, and it must be together. From Paris to Pittsburgh, from Pittsburgh to a net zero world.